Welcome back, everyone. This is the Pesce Lanzillotta Team Podcast. This is our second broadcast out to you guys. We got a nice podcast lined up for you today. We have the newest member of our team here, Paul Licari. We'll introduce him in a little bit, and he'll give you his perspective on things. We won't be able to relate to everyone, so we have a buyer here, John Pesce, my brother. He just bought a house, and he renovated it, and we'll give you he'll give you his thoughts on the personal side of that, and then we can chime in with, from a professional perspective, some tidbits there. But to start it off, I want to talk about a great cause. The Children's Heart Foundation. Ron's son was born with a congenital heart defect, so this weekend we did a charity event that the Lanzillottas do annually. It's an awesome charity event. It's an ugly sweater party. We had it at Ron's house, and they collect presents for children that are in the hospital to give to them over the holidays.
Love your sweater, by the way.
Thank you.
Fabulous. For anyone out there, Mike was wearing a sweater that had a Hanukkah. What do they call that? Menorah. Hanukkah. It had a menorah on it, and you hit a button, and it started to twinkle where the fire's supposed to be. Very funny. Very funny. My
wife and kids are Jewish, so
have to represent.
Yes, it's a holiday ugly sweater party.
John, did you have a sweater on that? We were all present, by the way.
I didn't have one.
Paul was there. You didn't have one?
I didn't.
Very unfestive. Very dry. Very dry. Yeah.
But if anyone wants to donate to that charity, we'll give you the information, or you can just email us at the end of the podcast when we give you our information.
Long story short, though, we collected thousands of toys. I mean, I have a big ranch and a big basement, and that basement was filled from one end to the other with a whole stretch of toys. My wife and I delivered a few bags 2 days ago to Winthrop, and the balance of the toys is going there in the beginning of January via box truck because there were so many. So
how long have you guys been doing that event for now?
So 3 years. My son was born 2.5 years ago, and since then, everything, thank God, has gone very well with him, and my wife, who I tip my hat to, is amazing, and she can chase 3 kids and collect thousands of toys and promote that kind of holiday philanthropy, call it, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But long story short, super success, very proud of her, very proud of the whole thing. We had a great time. We're going to do it again next year, and every year to come, we hope it gets bigger every year.
Awesome. So with that, we'll jump right into things here. So Paul Licari is the newest member of our team. He's been with us Paul, how long have you been with us for now?
A little over 6 months.
6 months, and he is crushing it. He had an awesome 2018. He had, in his first 6 months, hit the high water mark for sales. He sold a $1.6 million property in Garden City, which is awesome to be doing that 6 months in. And Paul, I want to hear about that property. But he's lined up for an awesome 2019. He's gonna do more business, I can guarantee it, than 95% of real estate agents out there. And it'll be his first full year on the job. But anyway, Paul, I mean, you're in your 20s, you're a young guy. What's your perspective on what's going on in the market, your experience so far in this industry, working with buyers and sellers? What do you think?
Well, I think that right now, people in their mid to late 20s who are starting to be buying a home, people want things, or they even expect things to be brand new. They don't want, nobody who's buying a house, especially who has kids and is starting a family, wants to buy a house to spend 6 to 8 months out of it to redo the entire thing. Their whole point is to buy a house and move in. They're probably living with their parents. It's their first purchase. They don't want to buy a house to live with their parents for another 8 months. And I think that in that Garden City case, where that was is people they're getting away from wanting to do all that work, and because interest rates were so low and investors were just pouring into new constructions, new renovations, whatever the case is, people that aren't as updated, they're taking a big hit because you're not going to redo the whole, let's say a kitchen, for example, because to redo a kitchen for, let's say, $20,000, depending on your area, you may not get that money back. So it's better off to, one, speak with a professional to know where you're pricing it, and just and know what direction to go into. I mean, someone like myself, I'd be buying a home. I don't want to do a lot of work. I want to buy a home and move in. I don't want to buy a home and spend another $200,000 redoing it, even if I got it at less money, because it's time. I don't want to deal with it. I'm willing to pay more money to just have it now than pay less money and have it in 6 months from now.
So what we're hearing is basically there's a big convenience factor, right? I mean, I feel like the world has changed, right? And I actually read up on that a lot, and the reason that happens, or is more prevalent today maybe than many years ago, is because in today's world, both mother and father are typically working, and there's a convenience factor involved because everybody's busy, everyone's out of the house, no one has time to watch a project, and the world is very different today in regards to renovations in general. The cost of doing it is very high, so unless you're actually the contractor himself flipping the house, the costs can be out of control, and it actually becomes more cost effective to just buy brand new rather than buy and renovate and deal with it and everything involved, because life has become much more busy. Typically both parents are out working, and to add that onto your plate, the experience or the burden of renovating is tough today.
So I think Paul also brings up a good point in that, people in their 20s who are first-time home buyers, he's like you said, Paul, when they buy, they're buying because they're ready to buy. So when you're ready to buy, you want to get out. You either want to get out of renting and into a house, or you want to get out of living with your parents and into a house. You're like, I'm ready to go. I want to own a house. I want to live the American dream, right? Be a homeowner. And that thought process for most people who are in their 20s, first-time home buyers, is not great. Let's do it. And then I bought it. All right, now I got to do 6 to 8 months of work and deal with that and figure that out and continue living in, whatever my current living situation is. So I think that's a good point. And we're seeing that in the market. That's why we're seeing new construction sell at a premium, newly renovated houses sell at a premium, and houses that need work, they're selling at discounts and they're sitting on the market for a long time. But John, you just bought a house. You did the exact opposite of what we're talking about. You bought a house and you renovated it. What was that process like?
Yeah, so it's funny hearing you guys talk about this because, literally the exact opposite. We bought a house. We tried to save up. To backtrack for a second, we tried to save up because we knew the area we liked. We both grew up same area, Massapequa. We knew we liked it. We knew we wanted to be there, and we liked the idea. We knew, budget-wise, we were kind of thinking starter home. Mm-hmm. But we both knew that we didn't want to have to move down the road. So we wanted a big frame, and that was something that was important to us. So the house was technically, when we bought it, was, technically move-in ready. It was just outdated.
Well, let me back you up. When you first started looking, were you looking at houses that you can renovate and make your own? Or were you looking at new constructions, or did you have no idea and you were just looking?
We were looking at houses that we could renovate. Maybe not, full renovation like we ended up doing, but we were looking at houses that need a little work. Because again, that at the time we felt that was where you can get the best bang for your buck. And that's something we're interested in.
That you were doing that because you thought that would give you the best deal.
Yes. Get us in the area we wanted to be in at something affordable to us. So we buy the house, we move in. It's the thought process. There wasn't really one at first. We moved in.
Just winging it.
Exactly, yeah. We're like, all right, the upstairs is a little outdated. Everything's outdated, but the upstairs, maybe we'll just start with, take down some of the old sheetrock, put up new sheetrock, maybe repaint. That'll be it. So, okay, if we're going to do that, maybe ripping down the sheetrock, maybe we'll do a rear dormer, make it a little bigger. All right, well, if we're going to do a rear dormer, we might as well do a full dormer. So, all right.
Things are spiraling pretty quickly.
Exactly.
Do you see where this is going?
So let's talk about that, right? You're buying something that you're going to end up renovating. You go into it. You think, maybe I'll drop $100,000 into this. $100,000 turns into $200,000, like that.
Right.
But walk me through like the decision-making process, because I mean, did you rip all the walls out and then you're staring at studs going, maybe we should just do the front dormer too? Or, I mean, how does that all transpire?
So, good question. How we started, my father-in-law, we kind of turned him loose on the demo process, and
Mistake.
It's great. It's great when you can wreck things, and then it's not your money when you have to rebuild it, right?
Yeah, it's a nice feeling. We just started doing. We just thought, we know we want to do at least this. So we started doing that. We started, kind of demoing upstairs a little bit. And I mean, it was like the snowball effect to the max. But we figured if we're doing this work, we might as well do more, because what we're going to end up doing, I'm the youngest of 3. My wife's the youngest of 4. Everyone basically owns houses, who's older than us. So we've seen that if you do a little work, you're only prolonging more work you have to do later. So we saw that firsthand with our siblings. So we kind of, bit the bullet and like, all right, well, if we're going to do this, we might as well do that so we don't have to worry about it later. So that, in a nutshell, I would say was the thought process for, going from, all right, maybe we'll repaint, rip down a wall or two, to, however many hundred thousands later.
Plus, do you start thinking to yourself in the process, I could do the back dormer and not the front dormer, and that saves me some money now, but later, that's something we're probably going to want to do. And are we spending double at that point?
Yeah.
And are we going through this again at that point?
Right. And are we going to be going through it with kids? Are we going to be going through it when, our lives are busier? So 100%. And I'm a firm believer in like it's a little saying, hard now, easy later, versus easy now, hard later.
Right.
It was very difficult to pull the trigger on that now, but one thing I will say, and going back to what you said, Paul, a lot of people are shying away from this, but one thing I will say, if you're even teetering on it, or you're thinking maybe you might want to do a little work, I can promise you the end result will be so much more rewarding, because it's yours. And
it'll be what you envisioned, what you planned, what you wanted.
Exactly. Correct? And what makes my wife happy.
So that's always important.
Happy wife, happy life. Yes.
So how long did the entire renovation take you?
So I GC'd it myself, which, that's up for debate whether or not someone wants to take on that project.
Walk us through that. Walk us through GCing it yourself. How do you find the right people to do the work? How do you know that they're credible? How do you arrange and time everything? Walk us through that entire process, because a GC will add how much money to a project?
And I mean, I got different quotes, but anywhere from 10% with kind of just like overseeing from the background, all the way up to 20-25%. They're going to be on site every day. It's their guys, all that. Wow. So yeah, just tack that on to whatever the cost of the actual project is.
Right. Having gone through it, do you think that 10 to 25% is worth it, or do you think it would have been overpaying?
I think it depends on the person. For me, 100%, I would have made the same decision again. Like if I was faced with it again, I would do it again today.
Now, did you make that decision because you wanted to be in control of the situation, or is it a budget decision?
Partially budget decision, partially me being a little bit of control freak, and then the other that's not a word. The other part of it was me being very naive and not understanding how much work was going into GCing it.
Right.
So.
Right. Well, I mean, first time you're crossing that bridge, right?
Exactly.
Okay. So you decide to GC it, you gut it, you start doing all this work. Timing these guys, getting them on the phone. Walk us through, if you had to name 3 things that most specifically were the negatives and 3 things that were the positives, right? So pros and cons of this whole thing. What was it like herding sheep, I guess is the best way to put it, right?
No, that's accurate. I mean, people understand that the contracting business, it's pretty well known that it's a flighty business. People in it are not always the most reliable or most savvy businessmen when they understand customer services.
Or they could be really good at what they do and in very high demand.
In which case they will charge a premium for that. They know how valuable they are.
Yes.
So I mean, it started with just working kind of my network, people who have done work, friends and family who have done work, people they've used, and then it is just one very large vetting process.
Right.
I mean, get 3 estimates, get 4 estimates, get however many you need. Even if someone did a good job for a neighbor or a friend, that was one job. That's not every job they've ever done. Like, you still need to like that person you're working with. You still need to have confidence in them.
Right.
So one biggest piece of advice was put time and energy and effort into properly getting estimates and vetting. That goes a long way.
Right.
So how long, when you first started, how long did you think the entire process was going to take?
We were getting married. I think we got the permits in like March or April. We were getting married in July, and it was our goal, very naively, to get it done by July. So get it done, whatever that is, less than 6 months.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
And how long did it end up taking?
Ended up taking a little less than a year.
So it took almost double. And now, did you have a budget going into it in your mind?
Yes. We talked to people who kind of are in the business, and we were given kind of a roundabout number, and that also ended up doubling.
Doubling, wow.
So
now, did that double because the project started off as something that was half the work, or did that double because of materials? Using better stuff. Like
What caused that to double?
Yeah, or is it just there? Because I have a theory, right? I have a theory that everybody's a salesman. It's my thing, right? I think no matter what you do in life, first you got to sell the job, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you are. If you sell carpet, if you sell tile, whatever it is you sell or do for a living, you've got to sell it. Now, one of a bait and switch thing here where they'll show you, a project that might cost, X amount of dollars. And then they know, based on meeting with you and hearing your feedback and the whole nine, that project's going to turn into what they know it's going to turn into. Because along the way, they're going to make suggestions leading you down this road that they know you're going to follow because you don't know any better. And that's going to end up being that's really where the double cost comes in. Make sense?
Makes a lot of sense. And I think you're right to some extent. I think it's a partially cynical view that people...
Well, I'm cynical. I don't trust anybody. That's just me.
But no, I mean, it's accurate. I think there are definitely contractors out there where that happens. I mean, it's hard to pinpoint where exactly that happened. I think to start, the person who told us what it was going to cost originally, they weren't actually doing the work, and we realized they were just throwing that number, like you're just flinging that number at us. That wasn't even close.
But as young people, you take that very seriously.
I mean, it's a lot of money.
Take it to heart.
The number they say, that's a lot of money. So you're like, wow, like I guess it can cost that much, So I think that's where it started, why it costs more. And I mean, it's hard to explain. It just costs more. Like house renovating, it's going to cost more. It's going to take longer. It just does.
Well, I think that's a fact of life. So let me ask, having gone through it, would you do it again, or would you keep looking for something that was finished and what you wanted?
So yeah, I mean, I'll defer back to kind of what I said before. 1,000% we would do it again. I would try and be smarter about how I did it, but 100%.
So what would you change? What would you be smarter about?
Getting the plan together before we started. It's like the full plan. So again, we kind of walked you through the progression before a little bit, and that kind of, when you don't know exactly what you're doing at first, that kind of adds on to it.
It sounded like your father-in-law ran upstairs, started knocking out some walls, and it was like, all right, here we go. All right, project's underway.
Yeah, and then what doesn't help either, we had our friends over one night. We were like drinking in the house, and my one good friend who likes to headbutt things, he got a little aggressive, so we decided that wall was coming down.
Yeah, if you want friends to help, provide them like pizza and cola. Don't be like, hey, come over for some beers and we'll do demo. Probably not the best idea.
Probably not.
So, all right. So it took you double. Let me ask you something. How many houses did you go see before you actually bought the house you bought?
I couldn't even put a number on it. We were looking probably for a year and a half, 2 years. We were picky. My wife, she's really good with this stuff, and we were paying attention.
So what were, as a buyer, what were your 3 like hot buttons, right? Like, what were you looking for specifically during that year or whatever it was that you saw 100 houses, let's say?
The three things was, I mean, obviously the neighborhood. Like
Right.
we wanted to be in Massapequa. That was important to both of us, being close to our families, where we grew up, all that good stuff. Good place to raise a family. Two was we wanted a good sized property, big yard. Property is not something you can attain later. It's not something you can add on.
Agreed.
So that's something that was important to us. And the third thing was, I guess two things in one, was good bones and big shell. So that would minimize costs down the road when we did want to do work.
So I want to interject Paul into this and get his thoughts. But first, so you looked for like a year and a half, you said. Did you work with a dedicated real estate agent?
We did for like parts of it. And then at the end, we ended up buying from a neighbor. So we weren't going through a real estate agent, but
So-
it was an off market that we just knew.
But there was no one you were working with the whole time as a dedicated person.
Correct.
So Paul, I want to get your thoughts. When you're because you've worked with a lot of buyers now. When you're working with a buyer, how do you make sure that they're dedicated to you? And what happened with John, where they're working with him for a little bit, but it's a year and a half process, which is not uncommon to buy a home, and then they end up going rogue and just doing something on their own. Like, what are you doing to make sure that buyer is dedicated to you?
Well, I think what Ron said was what he just asked John is the first thing that I ask, and it's very simple, but it tells you a lot about the person you're working with, and that's what are the 3 or 5? What are you looking for? Because someone will call me and say, hey, I'm looking for a house. We want to, in this area. Okay, well, what are you looking? What budget are you looking under? Have you looked into a pre-approval yet? Do you know that you can afford what you're looking for? What are you looking for exactly? And a lot of them, they may not know, and you guide them through. That's what you're here for, is to guide them through what they're looking for. And until they kind of maybe even talk out loud or think about it, a lot of them don't really know. They're looking at houses on Zillow or lipropertysearch.com or whatever the case is, and they're like, oh, well, this house is nice, but I like this house. And when you take them on showings, you end up looking at two totally different types of houses, and that's when you have to help them into what are you looking for. And that's what I usually ask, what are the 5 things, but you could ask 3, 4, 5, whatever it is. What are you looking for exactly?
I think it's also important to identify a timeline, right? We as realtors, we don't get paid till the end. You don't get paid till the end. So it's very important for you to know, hey, are you ready to pull the trigger if we find what you're looking for tomorrow? As a buyer's agent, right? You got to be very, very, very particular about who you're working with. They have to be ready to go. Because to be quite frank, if you worked with John, you're never going to pay your mortgage, right? So you can't spend a year with someone. You need someone to kind of find their way and almost be ready to rock and roll, and then it's up to you to prep them for the purchase.
And I wanted to ask you, John, you said you were about a year and a half or so you were looking?
Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to jump to conclusions, but were you a serious buyer for a year and a half? Because I don't really see that possible. Maybe it is.
He was window shopping for a year.
Were you looking on Zillow, casually looking at some houses, and then, let's say 3 to 4 months until you find something you like, then something switched and you're like, okay, no, now we're looking for a house?
Good question. Yeah, I mean, I guess I hear what you guys are saying and it makes total sense. I guess I'm more the exception than the rule. We were actively looking, and we were just, again, very picky, and we felt, and then you guys could probably, Mike and Ron, you guys could probably speak better to this, because we felt at the time, this was, probably 2015, 2016, that the market, at least in Massapequa anyway, was
peaking, very
It was
high.
crazy. I mean, houses that were, not even in that good a shape on a small property, high taxes, were like, we just felt like we would look at it, go to the open house, and the next day there'd be like an at-ask offer or above ask.
Better. So we actually said this on the last podcast. We were like, because we were looking back at 2018, and I was like, it's like stupid, what was a $350,000 fixer-upper little Cape house in Massapequa, right? That you would put a lot of money into and make it nice, was selling for like $450, $475.
Crazy.
And it's almost like the $350,000 became the new $500.
Yeah.
It just got stupid.
Yeah, it will, and that for us,
which is good for you. You have put together that off market deal before it ever hit the market. Who knows?
Right. We were fortunate in that sense that but again, we like to think that kind of paid off because we were picky and patient. But I mean, again, we had a timeline, kind of back to what you're saying, where we weren't that typical couple who was just like, all right, dying to get out and ready to go. We were, wanted to be patient. We didn't have high living expenses. We weren't like worried about that much. We really wanted our house.
So I know about your process because I'm your brother, obviously. So I also know, in addition to you being picky, that there were a lot of people involved in the decision-making process. Yes. So Paul, I want to ask you, and I want to get your perspective on both ends of it. One is when you're dealing with buyers that are young and have parents, two sets of parents, aunts, uncles, Uncle Freddie, everyone giving their 2 cents on what's important. How do you deal with that as a professional? But also, what's your advice to young buyers when they have that situation going on? Because I'm sure you've seen it affect their decision-making process and affect what they end up buying. So what's your advice to those people? Do you feel like usually it helps them out, or it doesn't help them out? They end up getting what they want, or they end up getting that something that someone else wanted? What's your 2 cents?
Yeah, and I see it all the time. Or they'll look at a house and, all right, I want to bring my parents back to look at it, or maybe the parents are putting the down payment down and they have to sign off on the house or co-sign, whatever the case is. And I think it goes back to the beginning part of it is just knowing who you're working with. Sit down at their house or get a cup of coffee or something, sit down for 30 minutes and talk and find out who they are. I mean, are they are they doing it on their own? Are their parents helping them? Are their in-laws helping them? Is their grandma or grandpa helping? Who's involved in this? So that, because I'm working with you, I'm not trying to sell you. I'm trying to help you find a home that you're going to buy and love. So if whoever's involved in that and whoever's looking into it, I need to be aware.
It's funny because you I can see Paul's so funny, but it becoming like an extension of everybody's family.
Yes,
like that's cynical. Like what are you talking about? Like talking to the dad, right? The dad's
just casually sitting in the middle of the couch, like in between the family members. Like,
I'll give you an example. I had a buyer looking at something, and she loved the house. She brought her mom back to look at it, who was going to help her with the down payment, and her mom didn't like the area for the kid and she wouldn't help her with it. And it goes back to you can't get into family issues, but it goes back to the beginning of even just talking with your buyer, like, hey, listen, what is your mom looking for? Where does she want you to be? Because instead of bringing you guys, wasting your time having to come, drive 15, 20, whatever the time is to come and look at the house and then come back again with your parents to look at it, why don't you just give me as much information as possible so that whatever I do show you, I know you're gonna like,
and you're gonna get past that final checkpoint, which is the mother who's probably co-signing a loan.
Exactly.
Yeah, or whose son or daughter wants the approval of their parents, or wants the okay from their parents because they trust them and they trust their opinion. I think you bring up a really good point. Is you have to be fully aware of the situation. You have to make sure you ask lots of questions and you know exactly what's going on. You know who's involved, because ultimately you're right. You don't want to sell them a house. You want to make sure they buy something. You want to help them buy something that they're going to be happy with and that they're going to love, and they know they made the right decision. Because the last thing you want is a client of yours buying something and not being happy, or a family member not being happy. So I think you're right.
Yeah, I mean, this is the biggest purchase. I mean, you're only doing this once or twice, maybe
in a lifetime. Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I mean, you have to listen. I mean, somebody may go out and. I mean, that I'm like that. I mean, I'll look at a couple of houses, but I know what I want. If I found something, I'm buying it that day.
Yeah, I think it's personality driven too, right? There's people who know exactly what they want, like me. Okay, I go to the mall. I don't spend more than 15 minutes in the mall. I go in the store. I know exactly what I'm there for. I execute my purchase immediately. I get out of the mall as fast as possible. Okay. Then there are people. Like, I don't know anyone in particular off the top of my head. Oh, my wife. My wife will go.
I was going to give you my wife as an example if you didn't come up with one.
My wife will go to the mall and walk around the mall for 2 hours and not buy anything. Because she'll walk out and say, it's all too expensive, right? She's a clearance rack shopper. And then there's my mother. My mother will walk into home. My mother pays the Home Goods lease every month with all the tchotchkes that she buys at Home Goods. So I think you have to maybe identify the buyer too. Like, for instance, if they're renting or if they currently own, right, and it's a sell to buy situation, talk to them about their buying experience or how they found the rental and how quickly they moved into that rental. If someone's going to shop for a rental for 4 months, they're likely going to spend a year trying to find a house, right?
If you want to predict the future, look at the past.
There you go. That's it. Podcast is over.
Paul, let me ask you the $1 million question. John, you got licensed 24 months earlier. You're an agent. You meet John as a buyer. Does he buy the renovation, or do you end up finding him the newly constructed house, the newly renovated house that he loves and he can move into right away?
Well, I want to make sure I have this right. So, I mean, I'm going to help him find whatever he wants. I mean, and that, again, it goes back to just knowing him. Now, he said he knew he wanted to renovate. So when I talk to him, I'm going to know that he wants to renovate something. So, it may not be something that's, a tear down, but it's something that's move-in condition, but he wants to be able to update it. That's at some sort of discount. And it just goes back to knowing him. Hey, John, listen, what are you looking for? If we found a house that's, I'm going to show you 5 houses, and if one of these houses has the lot you want, it's in the right area, has a good school district, has enough bedrooms and bathrooms, whatever it is this something that you're looking to move in now, or are you kind of just gathering some info for when you are going to buy something? Mm-hmm. And John was picky, which is fine, but again, I mean, you have to know what you're looking for. He knew what he was looking for, and he was just waiting for it to come on, and that's. It seems like he said, he wasn't really, he wasn't motivated enough to just go out and buy it. And
they flew off the market because of the market conditions the past year.
Yeah, there were a couple.
Did you put in offers and end up not getting it because someone else outbid you, or you just said it sold too fast, I'm not even going to make a move?
Anyone that sold, well, one we put in offers on, and we felt we had it priced right. But again, because of the market, they didn't want to take the offer. And I also think because, we were, I guess, relatively younger than the most home buyers they were looking at, they weren't taking us too seriously, even though we had the pre-approval. But yeah, I would say for the most part, we were just we were outbid on the few houses we bid on because we felt we were priced right, but other people didn't. Right. The market dictated otherwise.
And you get that with sellers too. I mean, I want to sell my house, but only if I get this number. If I don't get this number, I don't want to sell it. Mm-hmm. We don't really want to sell your house because, I mean, you will sell it, but you have no real motivation to sell it. I mean, if someone walked up to your door and gave you this money, then you'll move. If not, then you won't move. But that's what 99% of homeowners, if you gave them more than enough money, they'll probably leave. Which,
again, tying it back to being a realtor, you have to identify the motive, right? I mean, if someone says, I'm an empty nester, I got to get out of here, I got to move on with my life, you list that property. If someone says, I'm just going to list it and wait, and if I get what I want, I get what I want. If I don't have to go anywhere. I'm not going to go anywhere. And by the way, the last time I was listed, I was made 3 offers at, $100,000 below ask, and I didn't accept any of them. Well, a red flag should be going off in your head, right? At that point, because you don't want to waste your time either.
Yeah. To Paul's point, when a seller does that, you don't want to sell your house. You just want to make X amount of dollars, right? And you think you could do that by selling your house at this price, but you don't really want to sell your house.
And I think we saw a lot of that because, like John said, the market was at such a peak. I mean, people were just asking for ridiculous numbers, and they're like, "Hey, if I can get $200,000 more than I paid for my house 3 years ago, I'll sell it. And if I don't, whatever.
How many of those people thought about, well, if I sell it, where am I going?
That's another thing. I mean, if I buy it, am I going to spend X amount of dollars on, a new house? But it goes back to just knowing your real estate agent, trusting who you're working with and having them give you the right info. I mean, because for our situation, it was the perfect storm. I mean, buyers had low interest rates, and the house sellers were getting, premium dollars. But, now it's starting to change. But it's just knowing that. I mean, it's knowing that if I can get, the most amount of money out of this, this house and downsize and cash out now, rather than never having to cash out or waiting 10 years from now, then just do it. I might as well do it.
Yeah. I gotta ask, you're in this business 4 months, 5 months. You sold a $1.6 million house in Garden City. You got that listing. You have to walk me through how and why you've been so successful up to this point, being a young guy in a game and selling in a market, by the way, where there's a lot of old school realtors with long histories of selling houses. And here comes Paul Licari.
I know. I met the people who own that house. They have bought and flipped and sold homes in Garden City for a long time. They're established there. How do you, to Ron's point, how did you get them to trust you with a $1.6 million asset to sell it for them?
A $1.6 million asset.
Yeah, I mean, it's...
Yeah.
It goes back to people especially in that area, in that prestige. I mean, you're not... You can sell yourself to an extent, but you have to know what you're talking about at some point. You can't just fly your way through it, because especially someone who's been doing this like them for a while, I mean, they're going to ask you questions that they know the answer to already. So I mean,
they're testing you, they're baiting you, they're throwing yes.
Right, and
but again, you're doing this 5 months, 6 months. And how did you have these answers? Like, walk me through the process. Walk me through all of your success. You're on the job for a short period of time. You knew this is what you wanted to do. You came to me and Mike. We put you on. How are you finding so much success so short? Mentoring
is the biggest one, and learning, asking questions. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
I'll answer the question for you. So it's neither of the things you say. Well, it's learning. So it's two things. One is you've become an expert. You study the market. Mm-hmm. You know exactly what's on the market, exactly what's being sold. You're an expert in the market. You're an expert in the neighborhoods. The other thing is, it's coming across in this podcast. You are client focused, client centric. When I asked you about John, if you would have sold him a new home, if you were his agent, you're like, well, I'm going to do what he wants, and if I know he wants to buy something to renovate, I'm going to help him accomplish that goal. I think it's those two things. It's you being knowledgeable and being a student of real estate and Long Island neighborhoods, Long Island neighborhoods, and it's you focusing, not having an agenda of your own, but focusing on making your client happy. That's exactly why you've been successful.
I think it's important to note too that you tell Paul something once, he remembers it.
Yes, well, smart doesn't hurt.
And he's not afraid of a long work week. I mean, he's in here crack of dawn, making calls to the right people, trying to put together some kind of meeting or appointment to get in their house and list their property or identify a buyer opportunity, which is tremendous. I mean, Paul, you're a young guy. Your age demographic. Think about your group of friends. What kind of hours are they putting in? Do they even have a vision of what they want to be?
No, not really.
No. So that's a very millennial, a young millennial kind of thing, right? A lot of people, I think, are afraid to work to a certain degree. And when you can be the guy who's willing to come in, listen, you're fearless to the point where you'll stumble over and make a mistake, but you'll learn from it and never make it again. That's a formula for success.
Yeah, and I mean, go back to that Garden City house. I mean, it's when we sat down with the homeowners, I mean, they obviously know the area very well. They've been there for 30 years. Their parents lived there generations. They know everybody there. So everyone knows them as the Garden City Flippers. I mean, that's how everyone Garden City Flippers, because they flipped so many homes there that's how everybody knows them as. And when we went in there and they asked us about price, she knew what the house was worth. I mean, she said to us, what do you think the house is worth? And we said, we think it's worth about, X amount of dollars, right? And she said, yeah, I think that's what it's worth. And when we tell her about how we do, I mean, you have to be confident in yourself. I mean, we're at the point now, I mean, and I learned this just from going with you guys for this amount of time. I know that if I can just get into an appointment, there's no way they're going to pick somebody over us, because we do it better. I know that I do it better than the other person that's there.
Yep.
So when you know that, it'll come across as that, and they'll know that.
So I mean, I equate a listing appointment to a job interview, right?
It is. And
essentially, you don't know who you're walking in and talking to. Remember the other day we met that guy from Brooklyn? He knew everything about the market.
Everything.
Right. And then there's people like the Garden City people who, they're not going to tell you they know everything, but they know everything, and they're quizzing you.
Yep.
And if you get the answers right, if you pass the test, you're eligible to list that property, right? So talk to me about preparing for a listing appointment, right? How do you go into that job interview and walk out successful?
I think it starts before you even go in there, is setting the right expectations. I mean, if a house was listed for $1 million and and they want to sell it, and you speak to them and you're doing your analysis and market CMA and looking at other houses that sold, and you're looking and you're saying, with the market now, there is no way this house is selling for more than $600,000. Well, if you know they want $1 million, so if you're clearly way off on a number. So, but what I do is beforehand I call them and say, hey, listen, I just wanted to follow up with you because I'm doing some research here, and I saw you were listed for X amount of dollars, and I got to tell you, I mean, what are you looking for the house? Because maybe they just put it up to put it up, or, and it goes back to what is their motivation? Do they really want to leave, or are they, if I get my number, I'll leave?
Yeah, and you're trying to protect your time. That's actually, that method that you probably had no idea, that comes from Mike Ferry, who is the godfather of real estate coaching. And he used to send out back in the 80s, 90s, what they would call, it was a pre-listing packet. And it had a CMA in it, when a CMA was like a big deal, right? Now it's just, everybody knows the price of their house.
Comparative market analysis.
Yeah. And what he was doing was, he was sending the packet out. People would turn around, call him up and say, hey, this is why your analysis is wrong. And he was identifying problems before he even got to the listing appointment. So he was tackling objections before he got in. So Paul's doing that, doesn't even know he's doing it, but he's doing it because he's so prepared, and he knows how to take time, think about it. He doesn't just wing it. He goes in knowing all the details and every which way this could go. This way, you're confident and comfortable, correct?
Yeah, and I mean, it's just, and I mean, I've lost the listing appointments, I guess you can say. I mean, I don't see it as a loss. Yeah, because you can get it, but it won't sell, or you could go in there and not get it. I mean, it's just either way. I mean, it happens all the time, but it's just, you have to know what you're getting yourself into. Because if you're on two totally opposite sides before you even list a house, forget it. I mean,
that's going to go from the beginning. It's going to go. They'll be asking for a withdrawal in 30 days.
Oh yeah.
That goes back to you caring about your clients and what they want. You don't have an agenda. They don't say I want to sell it for $1 million. It's 600,000. You don't go, okay, I could sell it for $1 million just so you can move on and list the property, right?
It makes no sense.
You're honest because you ultimately know that if the goal is to sell the property for your client, you need to be truthful, and you need to make sure they understand what it can actually sell at before you go ahead and start wasting everyone's time.
Yeah, and I mean, again, I don't do that for every appointment because it depends on the price difference, and I just say, hey, listen, you're priced at $1 million, and what I'm looking at right now, without seeing the house, I'm looking at, I don't see you getting more than between $600,000 and $750,000. Now that range anywhere between there, I wouldn't know unless I saw it, but we're $250,000 off already. So, are you, what's your motivation to sell? Are you really looking to move, or are you, what's going on? And
I think part of your job is helping people understand, right? Because a lot of people might say, oh, I want to buy a home, I want to sell a home. and then you help them confirm that decision. Because some people, like for John, it was a 1.5-year process. For him, it was a 1.5-year process, but he actually wanted to. But for some people, it's a 1.5-year process because they're not actually ready yet. And when you can get them to realize that they're not actually ready to pull the trigger on selling or buying, you're helping them. You're helping them because you're educating them about the process. You're preparing them for what it's actually going to entail. You're preparing them for the reality of what they can actually buy or what they can actually sell their house for. So that ultimately, when they do it, they know that they were aware of the reality, that they've built up to this moment, that they're ready for it, and it was a good decision.
Yeah, and some people won't, I know that I'm doing a good job, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that go out and they'll just list it with somebody who will take it. Because if you walk into any office and just say, hey, I have a listing I need help with, everyone's going to want to help you.
Yeah, look, there's how many is thousands and I think 6, 7, 8,000 realtors on Long Island, maybe more. You got a lot of people there who they'll take anything. They'll take a house that's worth $500,000 and list it for $1 million just to have a listing.
Yeah,
because no one knows how to go out there and get listings. So coming back to building houses or buying brand new, Mike recently purchased a brand new house, new construction. Pros and cons, because you've also previously bought and renovated a Sandy home. So no one knows better than you in comparing the two. I'm curious to know the pros to buying a brand new house, the cons to buying a brand new house, the different things you have to deal with regarding the builder, so on and so forth.
Yeah, ultimately, I think it's a very personal decision. It comes down to preference, and you need to my point before of Paul working with people and helping them figure out exactly what they want. You need to know what type of person you are. For me, I've bought a house after Sandy and I've renovated it, and I've also bought a brand new construction. Personally, I never want to touch a renovation again. I want to buy something that when I move into, it's done. And for me, the pro is simple. The pro is I'm busy. I work a lot, and when I'm not working, I want to be able to spend time with my family and just relax. I don't want to go home to another job and have a project to do, and that's a personal decision for me. And I'm happy to pay what I can afford, but I'm happy to pay for something that's finished over, it's not a financial decision for me. I'm happy to pay for something that's finished, even if I might be able to get a little bit of a better deal by buying something and taking the time to fix it up myself. So for me, I would say it's personal, and for me, that's the pro, is that it's just my time.
Turnkey.
And I want to be done. Yeah. It's turnkey.
Turnkey, no hassle, no headache. Boom, you're in.
Correct. The only negative I would say is that when you buy a brand new construction, you expect it to be perfect. At least I do. And listen, it's a house. It's a house. There's going to be...
It's meant to be lived in.
Yeah, there's going to be some moldings some areas of grout that are cracked a little, and the wood, the house settles, and the wood floor and the moldings and things might separate a little, and stuff happens, right? It's when you buy a new construction, you expect perfection, and you're not going to get perfection. And ultimately, it's an asset that appreciates if you don't take care of it. So it's not like, let me spend all this extra money to buy a brand new house, but then that's it. I'll spend some extra money, but that's it. I'm done. I don't need any savings, or there's nothing else I'm going to have to put into it, because that's not the truth. The truth is, it's a house. Stuff's going to happen, and you're going to need to take care of it. And so
there's always upkeep.
Exactly. So you still want to make sure you maintain a little bit of money and know that you're actually still going to have to take care of it. The expectation can't be, brand new, done, that's it. I'm just going to go to sleep, and that's it.
Right. Well, then there's also kids, right? And they don't help.
Yeah, I have 2 little kids. The little kids destroy a house, so you better just, you got to come to terms with that.
I think, look, it's meant to be lived in. Memories are going to be made there, and it's preference. It's what fits your lifestyle best. It's what fits where you are in your life now. You are at a stage where you're running around, you're trying to list as much property as possible, you're trying to connect buyers and sellers, you're in the middle of your money-making earning years. You do not want to be in the middle of a construction project while you're in the middle of those years. So, yeah.
I mean, listen, guys. So I think we've kind of said it all today. And thanks for joining us, Paul. You could see why he had an awesome 2018, and he's going to light it up in 2019.
I'm excited. What do you think? I think Paul does. I'm going to make a prediction.
Well, Paul, what do you want? What's your goal for 2019?
Let's talk about goals. Let's talk about goals for 2019.
Volume? And what?
Volume.
I mean, I'd love to do 30 million.
Okay.
Sell $30 million worth of houses.
$30 million worth of houses. I'm going to hold you to that. It's December. It's December.
Yeah, you just went on record, Paul. You got to be careful.
Today's December what? 18th? December 18th?
Yep.
Okay, it's December 18th. Paul just made a commitment.
Well, I think
Paul just made a commitment.
I like setting it all the way up here, so if you fall a little short, you're still
You'll hit it,
above
Paul.
Bullshit. I think he'll do 40. I think he'll do 40.
You'll exceed
At
it.
the moment of commitment, the universe conspires to assist you.
Yeah, full commitment,
like that?
though. It's got to be a
Yeah.
full commitment.
John,
You got to be in it to win it.
You
John,
got
it's
it.
deep. What's the other one you had today?
Hard now, easy later.
Hard now, easy later.
Hard
Wow.
now, easy later.
Live by that.
We have Confucius with us today.
So the path to getting there, real quick, and I know we were about to wrap it up, but the path to 30 million.
setting yourself up before the
What
new
do
year.
you have to do to get to 30 million?
Setting yourself up before the new year.
How?
Talking to as many people as you can. Because, listen, I mean, we get it. I mean, the holidays are here. Christmas is next week. New Year's is in 2 weeks. You know, most people don't want to list their house 2 days before Christmas. I mean, we totally get that. But identify, speak to as many people as you know that, listen, we're either going to buy or we're going to sell come end of January, February, March, whatever that is.
So in other words, we're identifying potential clients.
So from when that new year starts, you already have 5 people that you either are going to be listing or helping to buy or whatever that case is, that you already have business before the new year even started, before you even did anything.
Right.
And it's just carrying that over every single day. I mean,
So identify, then you have to classify these people, right? So we're identifying people who are likely to buy or sell. We're classifying them as to whether or not they're buyers, sellers, and how fast or soon they want to move. Mm-hmm. And then we're executing. Right?
That's right.
I like it. I like it. Paul, I am looking forward to you and a big 4-0 over your head this time next year. Johnny boy,
Hey, Ron.
throw me a number, buddy. What are you doing this year? Minimum 10. Minimum 10.
Minimum 10. Hold
By
on.
the way, John walked in the office, started selling real estate with us a month ago. Already listed his first property in the #1 school district, top 3 most desired town on Long Island. We had an open house this past weekend. How many people were through?
11.
And it's the middle of December, middle of the holidays. 11 people through an open house. I can't tell you how many open houses we've all sat through that we didn't have one person show up at times.
and those 11 people, I mean, that in, let's say, I don't know, July may have been 30, but the 11 people now are 11 people who are
Serious
buying
people.
a house.
Yeah.
No one's looking at houses the week before Christmas
No.
just to
Yeah,
look
just for
around.
fun.
No. But 21 Mesa Road
Yeah.
in Syosset, nice little split. Very cool house. Just hit the market. Take a look at it on Zillow or lipropertysearch.com for that matter. All right, let's get this wrapped up. We are the Pesce and Lanzillotta team at Douglas Elliman. Our office line is 516-888-9711. Our email is info@pl-team.com. Our website is www.thepescelanzillottateam.com. Mike, you got anything to add?
Hope you enjoyed the podcast. See you guys next time.